Stand.
Bill S-209, numéro 9, projet de loi S-209.
Senator Galvez.
Senator Galvez.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I rise today to support Bill S-209, which aims to lower the voting age to 16. This bill is in complete alignment with the Senate's constitutional mandate to protect minorities who lack representation in our parliament, such as youth and future generations. Before me, Senators McFedran, Mercer, Miville-Deschênes, Omnivar, and McCallum have, with eloquence, gave reasons and arguments in support of lowering the voting age to 16. Solid arguments include the following. Young people have already many adult responsibilities, but are denied the same rights. They are expected to follow the law, but have no say in making it. They are already participating in politics despite attempts to dismiss them from the political process, even when they make conscious, wise voters. Lowering the vote will help increase voter turnout and will improve the lives of youth. In a democracy, we don't deny the vote because we think they might vote against one's ideas. Universal suffrage is the right of all citizens, and the ability to vote should not be taken away lightly, arbitrarily. Finally, legislation to lower the voting age has a strong support around the world, and voting laws are changing to reflect that with positive results. Indeed, when the voting age has been lowered to 16, young people have shown interest in voting in Norway, Scotland, and Austria. Comme vous le savez, mes collègues, les connaissances.
As you know, colleagues, knowledge and experience are not criteria for eligibility to vote. Amélie Bollé is 17 years old, and she says, the argument that we are not wise enough to elect our leaders is contradictory. Wisdom is a human trait that aspires to knowledge and understanding while knowing to remain open-minded. If we lack wisdom, why do we have the right to stop going to school at age 16? End of quote.
English dictionary choose youthquake as their word of the year, defined as significant cultural, political, or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people. Indeed, people under the age of 18 have won a Nobel Prize, reached the summit of Mount Everest, conducted cancer research, become published authors, taught graduate-level courses in nuclear physics, run their own schools, work for NASA, and risk their lives almost every day to save others. According to a 2019 Abacus poll, young Canadians between 15 and 30 years old prioritize solving global challenges, such as climate change, but also as profound demographic changes, economic transition and disruption, and the rise of extremism and political polarization around the world. Young Canadians are well aware of this challenge that have disproportional impacts on them. But since young people are underrepresented in politics, these issues affecting them are understated as well. Aya Arba de Gatineau.
Aya Arba of Gatineau is a good example. The secondary 3 student is very involved at her school. She loves history, politics, science, and especially astronomy. She insists, and I quote, the climate crisis, human rights, social and economic inequalities, these are so many issues on which countries would benefit from listening to us. I think many of us are ready to vote because we're much more aware and informed about the important issues facing the country than our parents and grandparents were at our age. Because of the internet, we have access to all the information in the world at our fingertips. Even at the age of 14, it's not uncommon to see us discussing politics and sharing our opinions with the somewhat idealistic desire to see things get done. End of quote. The same thing goes for Solène Tessier of Montreal, and let me quote from some of her testimony. I've been socially involved since I was a child. When I was 4 years old, I sang to raise funds for a home for troubled women. Starting when I was the representative for the school's Green Committee when I was in kindergarten, I've always been involved in student life at school. When I was 8 years old, I took part in marches in support of women, and I also marched with my mother and my PAN for the Mouvement des Carrés Rouges to defend my future and my right to access to education in 2012. I was even the one who convinced my dad to join us at the march. I was 10 years old, and I did a lot of volunteer work for different causes. When I was 15, I sat with patients at the hospital for 3 hours a week. I was also 15 when I started to develop my own political values and opinions. I watched the National Assembly debates from time to time. Sometimes it's boring, but it's not that bad. When I was 17, I became a youth climate leader with the organization Kids Environment. I give talks at schools. I act mostly out of hope for a healthy and green future where I would feel good in my community, and I sincerely believe that together we'll make it happen. It's such a beautiful social project. As a young person who's very involved, I find it hard that I'm not allowed to vote. We young people, we express ourselves, we're asking for action, but we cannot participate in this action by voting for those who can. Without a political presence, our voices don't really carry. If we don't feel heard, it's not motivating, even if everybody congratulates us on our commitment and our petitions. Climate change is a more abstract thing for older people who'll not have to really live through it. People who are voting right now are not voting for the interests of young people. They care about what affects them right now. But us young people, we're going to experience the very real consequences of climate change. If we all have to wait until we're 18 for the right to vote and to demand more action from governments, well, it'll be too late to deal with the consequences of climate change. Young people would be less anxious about their future if they were not just spectators of politics. I wish I'd been able to vote in the last federal election, which would have been possible if the voting age had been lowered to 16, and I would have preferred to have voted under a mixed-member proportional system. So instead, I started getting involved with Extinction Rebellion and participating in direct action because I felt I couldn't make an impact otherwise. When I'm involved in a cause, I'm much less anxious because when I act, it gives me hope. And it works. It has put the climate crisis on Tout le monde en parle. Solène turned 18 this summer. She's already been contributing to improving society for 14 years, but she still can't vote.
Echo by Zoe and Sophia from Ontario. Zoe Carey Matzner, 13 years old, says, and I quote, "Young people's futures are being destroyed by the older generations. We do not have a say in the decisions governments are making about our own future. That is why we protest, because it is the only thing we can do to protect ourselves. It would be nice to decide of our own future for once. So if the voting age were lower, we could make our voices heard and have a say in government decisions." End quote. Zoe wants to study animal behavior as an ethologist one day, but she's scared about what biodiversity laws will mean for career plans. Sophia Mature add, quote, "I have been lobbying politicians since I was 7 years old for climate action. All my friends know the issues that are impacting our life. We are 13 years old, which means we can vote to protect our future until 2025. That is too long to wait to protect our future from climate breakdown." End quote. Sophia Mature was the first student in Canada to join the Fridays for Future movement in November 2018. That's well before Swedish activist Greta Thunberg galvanized the youth climate movement which resulted in more than 500,000 people in the streets of Montreal in September 2019, and many more throughout Canada. Both Zoe and Sophia are suing the Ontario government for weakening its climate targets, which will lead to widespread illness and death, as we are seeing it with COVID-19, violating their charter rights to life, liberty, and security. Colleagues, the youth want political action to protect their future. Either we give them means to act by allowing them to exercise democratic rights, or we will keep fighting our own children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, and their friends in courts, or watching them protest in the streets. Many of my colleagues have proposed legislative action to help the youth, from Girl Scouts to protection from pornography, and a proposed commissioner of youth. But as the testimony I have conveyed today clearly show, the best thing we can do for youth is to let them speak for themselves, which they are obviously capable of doing, and that is to support Bill S-209. Thank you, merci, miigwech.